Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, if you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the Mayor of London has set an ambition of achieving net zero by 2030, and a contributor to that target is 15% of energy demand to be met by local distributed energy resources by the same year. So ways in which we're trying to do that is by accelerating the development of clean, local and flexible energy districts and systems, and also very much focusing on decarbonising buildings, transport, in a way to tackle London's climate emergency. But what I'd like to share with you this afternoon is 3 ways in which we're trying to open up and exploit the value of data to address and deliver net zero. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So the first approach I'd like to take you through is the London building stock model. So the Mayor is committed to cutting fuel poverty and increasing energy efficiency of buildings across London. And the Mayor's Fuel Poverty Action Plan set out his aim to launch an open source pan-London energy performance certificate data model. If you go on to the next slide, please. So to help target where action is needed most, the Mayor has developed the model with UCL Energy Institute, and the model has data on every domestic and non-domestic building in the capital. If you go to the next slide, please. So along with the net zero that I talked about commitment, what's driving this is around London's buildings contribute around 76% of the capital's greenhouse gases. So urgent action is needed to increase the number of homes and workplaces that are retrofitted with energy efficiency measures. So the building stock model is a database of all the energy and carbon data collected through the Mayor's energy programmes and policies. And it provides a snapshot of all London's buildings with information on their energy performance certificates and helps identify worst performing buildings and homes most likely to be in fuel poverty. If you go on to the next slide, please. So the tool will inform our help and advice to London boroughs on how to best use data to identify households in fuel poverty. It will also help them enforce minimum energy efficiency standards and locate the worst performing non-domestic buildings. This will make it easier to target businesses with energy efficiency programs, particularly SMEs, to help them cut their energy bills. So we go on to the next slide, please. So the second tool and model that I'd like to share with you is the London Solar Opportunity Map. Next slide, please. So the Mayor's Solar Action Plan sets out how City Hall programmes are expected to more than double London's current solar energy capacity. But the Mayor and the GLA think that London can and should go further than this and wants to provide support to local boroughs, businesses and others to install more solar in London. The Solar Action Plan sets a target to achieve 1 gigawatt of installed solar in London by 2030 and 2 gigawatts by 2050. Which will require 20 times more solar energy generation. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So we're committed to increasing the amount of solar energy captured in London as part of a wider ambition for net zero. And we've developed the London Solar Opportunity Map with UCL's Energy Institute and the Centre for Advanced Spatial Awareness Analysis to help London businesses and other organisations identify opportunities to install solar panels on their property. If you go on to the next slide, please. So through spatial mapping and access to technical support, the London Solar Opportunity Map accurately highlights opportunity areas for installing solar PV, solar thermal and storage in homes and businesses. Then the next slide, please. And the Solar Opportunity Map is based on the interpretation of LiDAR data collected and made available by the Environment Agency. And it provides an initial estimate of the amount of electricity that could be generated from panels, both on rooftops and at ground level. Next slide, please. Then the third way in which we're trying to bring data into the open and value that data is through the London heat map. Next slide, please. So the new London heat map is a map-based web application that you can use to find and appraise opportunities for decentralized energy projects in London. And the map covers the whole of Greater London and provides very local information to help you identify and develop decentralized energy opportunities, including data such as heat demand values for each building, locations of energy supply plants, existing networks, and spatial heat demand density. And importantly, the new map includes a user-friendly visual tool for heat network design. So you can start designing your own network. And this is intended to support preliminary techno-economic appraisal of potential district heating networks. So the London heat map is used by a variety of people at the moment, and in numerous ways. London boroughs can use the new map to help develop their energy master plans, local area energy plans, and their own DE projects. Property developers can use the map to help them meet the decentralised energy policies in the London planning policy document, and the London environment strategy. And consultants can use the map to gather initial data to inform feasibility. So the current slide that you're seeing now is one of the visual layers that can be displayed on the map. This layer shows the distribution of heat demand across London, and areas with a high density of heat demand are coloured in red. If you go on to the next slide, please. And this is showing the existing and planned heat networks in London today, and we're looking to add to this as often as possible, so that we get a real rich sense of where the networks are, where they're planned to be. If you go on to the next slide. And what I've done here is overlaid the geography of Greater London's opportunity area planning framework. So this is where we see major development happening in London, and there's specific planning frameworks in place to bring that development forward in a sustainable way. Next slide, please. And then on top of this I've overlaid heat network priority areas. So these identify where in London the heat density is sufficient for heat networks to provide a competitive solution for supplying heat to buildings and consumers. As you can see, those zone areas are pretty large. So the next stage is really to, within those areas, working with local authorities and other private sector partners, how do we bring those areas to life with new networks? If you go on to the next slide, please. And then overlaid again is a whole host of data, and this is indicating areas where detailed heat mapping and master planning studies have been carried out. And by clicking on one of these shapes, reveals a hyperlink to the relevant study report. So the real rich data sets there that you can start accessing. Next slide, please. And then this is showing in the orange circles a set of point locations at which there's potential for new or existing heat supplies. And then where you see one of the points exploding, that shows the number of heat points that there could be in that area. So there's quite a lot of heat opportunity in London. If you go to the next slide, please. So once you've found the area that you're interested in exploring the heat network for, this part of the tool provides you with a means to investigate and construct models for potential heat networks. So I've just highlighted here a site that, or an area that will be familiar to most of you, which is the Olympic site back from 2012 that's undergoing significant development at the moment. Next slide, please. So when the network mode is switched on, which is the little orange circle you'll see on the right-hand side, you'll see a number of features displayed on the map: existing buildings, roads, pathways through parkland, sites with planning permission, and heat supply sites. So that's the map key in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you go on to the next slide, please. And then what I've highlighted here for you is those buildings in this area that have got highest heat density or heat demand. So really those should be sites that you should be looking to connect heat networks up with, because they're the ones where you're going to get most payback for your network. If you go on to the next slide, this is my final slide. So just to say in the left-hand corner, you'll see that it's saying there's 8,975 existing sites within this area that I've selected. 110 sites have planning permission, and there's 8 supply sites for heat. So the main function of the network mode that we're in on this slide is to construct valid networks. So once you've constructed a network where you've joined up some of the buildings with some of the heat supply, then it breaks that out into 3 areas: an overview of the network you've constructed, how the network is functioning, and then the financing. So it's a really good way to start to understand, does this network that you constructed stack up financially, to then start taking it to the next level of design and hopefully implementation. And then you can export the network that you've created in GeoJSON or Excel format. And then building on this tool, we've very recently launched our Local Energy Accelerator program. And in part, that is about supporting public and private sectors to bring forward clean local energy projects in London, including low carbon or zero carbon heat networks. So that was just an overview of 3 models and tools that we're brought to life with the data that we have and others to then start driving delivery of net zero by 2030. So thank you for listening.